Awesome. So we wanted to open with this little question asking you, what would you like to get from today's workshop? So if you go to the top of your screen, there are viewing options and you can click annotate and you can write some of your comments and ideas directly on the slide so everyone can see together. Inspiration and ideas for our workshops. Learn about communication.
Happiness.
Would love to get a feel of how to present for future workshops, how to communicate better with a team. Amazing. So we will definitely be touching most of these points today. Thank you, everyone. How to lead small groups. Learn about yourself and leadership skills. Awesome. Leadership. Love that. Love that. Absolutely. So Kiara and I will be talking about most of these things, and anything that we don't get to today, we are keeping in mind, and we will make sure that we provide you with this information so that you feel comfortable and ready for orientation. Awesome. So moving on. Why communication? So as a lot of you have pointed out, we communicate to collaborate. Humans are social creatures and we rely on cooperation. Chad and I chose today's workshop because we know communication is an essential skill that you will use for the rest of your lives. In your profession, in your personal lives, we communicate every single day to feel seen, heard, valued, and to give value. We want to connect with our audience.
So today's speakers are myself, Kiara, and Sienna. So I'm one of the orientation coordinators. I just graduated this year. I majored in political science. In the fall, I will be starting at Boise.
And my name is Sienna Chu. I'm also an orientation coordinator, going into my 4th year studying neuroscience, molecular genetics, and microbiology.
And Sienna and I have been involved in university student government, mentorship, and clubs since about 2019. And we practice communication in our various roles, but we are not experts on the subject. So we hope that you can find some useful knowledge from this. Sienna and I have drawn from our own experiences, as well as some research, additional research that we've done. And we hope that you can find it beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. We also want to say that a lot of the things that we talk about today, we know that Kiet and I aren't perfect, but we're dedicated to becoming better communicators alongside you. And so we hope that we can provide some ideas and resources when you're considering, how can I be a better communicator? Alrighty, so I've had this conversation with my dad many, many, many times. And it goes something like this. You have a tone. I don't have a tone. You have a tone. I don't have a tone. And we'll be running verbal circles around each other for ages. And one day my dad said something to me that has really stuck with me ever since. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what they hear. Communication happens when your message is received and retained. Otherwise, you're just making noise. So let's put some ideas on the slide of why might someone not receive your message? You can use the annotate tool again by going to the top of your screen and clicking view options annotate. Using unclear language. Absolutely. Unclear, unclear message. Did not TH. Lovely ideas, everyone. I see a period. I love it. Body language, yes. Awesome. Initial biases. I love whoever wrote that in big letters. To not explain what you really meant. Language barriers, unclear. Exactly, exactly. So we're going to talk in this first part of the presentation about how can we increase the probability that our message is received and prevent unclear messages and misunderstandings. What is the foundation of good communication? So the first building block is you, your voice, your facial expressions, your body language. How can you make all of that work for your message? There are many things that go into this building block, but I'm only going to talk about three. The first is pace. We've all been in lecture with that professor that just drones on and on so slowly. And we've been in classes where the professor is going a million words per minute. Your hand is cramping, you feel carpal tunnel settling in, and neither of those is a very positive learning experience. And so I encourage you to remember that it takes the human brain time to process new information. When you're speaking, choose a pace that allows for your audience to have time to analyze, process, and integrate your words. And in those spaces, you too will have time to take in information from your audience and maybe better cater your message or your delivery to that specific group. The second is dynamics. Dynamics means movement and change. How can you introduce movement and change into your voice? Well, you can vary your volume, your speed, your prosody. You can stress different words. These different vocal patterns can allow you to emphasize the main points of your message and better engage your audience. The human brain is also programmed to notice changes in our environment. That's what captures our attention. And the third piece is awareness. Are you listening to yourself? How do you think you're being perceived? This ties directly into that conversation that I have with my dad all the time. Think about what attitude you're using and presenting to the other person. And think about how your words and your tone is going to land on them. I guarantee you, when your audience wants to listen to you, you're much more likely to have your message received. The second building block is your message. And this is something I need to remind myself every single day before I open my mouth. And that is to be concise. I've linked in this slide a video from Dr. Sivan Than talking about his research on the dilution effect. And essentially what it says is if you're trying to make a point and you add extra statements that are slightly irrelevant, they're not as strong as your strongest arguments, those do not add to the value of your overall argument. They actually reduce the effectiveness, value, and impact of the stronger arguments that you're trying to make, and they drag down the rest of your point. So, what does that mean? Plan ahead. When you're thinking about what you want to say, choose only your main points and your strongest arguments and stick to them. You can put everything else in a box and set it aside for another day, another time. So when we're giving presentations, we know what that looks like. We plan, we practice, we make PowerPoint slides, we edit and refine. But what do we do when we're having a conversation right now and we need to adapt on the spot? I encourage you to be open to spaces and pauses and silence in your conversations. Because in those spaces, you will have time to get a hold of your thoughts, get a hold of your emotions, and plan out the next statement that you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And at the same time, the person you're talking to and your audience, they also have time to reflect back on what has been said so far and maybe reform their opinion. Leaving spaces and silence in your conversation might allow you to reach a mutual understanding in a more efficient way. The last piece is your audience. You want to know your audience. What are their values? What are their concerns? When you know your audience, you can cater your message to address their concerns and show that you understand what's important to them. The second piece is to share. Be your authentic self, be honest. Share your stories and be open to sharing your vulnerability. Allow your audience to see that human side of you and connect with it. Connection. That's the third piece. I think this is a really wonderful quote. It is better to be interested than to be interesting. So, what does that mean? That means to be curious about the person you're talking to. Ask them questions and be invested in listening to their answers. You want to show that person that you value them and you value what's important to them. When you align yourself with your audience and you show them that you are all on the same team, working towards the same goal, you'll be much more likely to be open to communication and collaboration towards that common goal. So we already talked about the 3 building blocks of communication, and I know that not all of these things are easy to implement. So let's think about some and share some of our own vulnerabilities. What do you think is really difficult when you're trying to have a conversation with someone or when you're about to do some public speaking? You can again go to the top of your screen, click viewing options, and annotate. Maintaining, trying to formulate a complete thought. I find it hard not to ramble, trying to stay concise. Eye contact. Eye contact is really difficult. Fun little fact that I learned today about eye contact, or this week about eye contact, is that when you're giving a presentation, it's good to spend about 3 seconds of eye contact with each person that you're listening to so that everyone feels like you're speaking to them and no one feels like you're really awkwardly just staring right at them. Awesome. Keeping a constant pace. Awesome. Checking to ensure that they understand what your message is. Yes, yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing a little bit about yourself and what your struggles might be. I think that if you take a look at the screen, there are many people in this limited 18 of us Zoom call that also are experiencing similar fears and similar struggles when they communicate. I myself also have trouble not rambling, keeping a constant pace, and formulating a complete thought sometimes. So don't worry. Let's talk about what we can do to kind of practice these skills and help ourselves feel more confident. The first step to building these building blocks of communication is to know, what does an amazing, excellent, and engaging speaker do and say when they're talking or giving a presentation? So I encourage you to watch videos, watch TED Talks, attend conferences, pay attention to your prof, pay attention to awesome speakers that you just come across. Identify their strengths and think about, how can you implement that into your own style? Next is to actually implement and practice those skills. So these are 2 things that I do to practice my public speaking. I'm not a vocal coach, but I really, really think that these have helped me become a smoother and more confident public speaker. And the first one is about reading out loud. So I pick a book and I pick one paragraph and I read that paragraph. And I read it again and I read it again. And when it sounds pretty good, I record myself and I give myself feedback. I think about, how did my voice sound? How is my volume, my speed? If I only listened to this recording, would I have understood the main message of that paragraph? The best part about reading out loud is that you don't need to worry about forming a complete thought. You don't need to worry about planning out your message or being concise because you're reading someone else's message. And you can also get ideas of words, phrases, and expand your vocabulary by reading out loud. The second thing I do is I give presentations. I give them to myself, to my stuffed animals, to my laundry, to the pictures on my wall, anything in my house that will listen to me, I give presentations. So again, I pick a topic. Maybe it's from a TED Talk, maybe it's from lecture. and I plan out, what do I want to say about this topic? And then I present. And then I present again, and I keep refining the language and I keep refining the delivery. And when I feel good enough, I record it and I give myself feedback. So I know a lot of you are thinking, Sienna records herself. I know your voice on recording, it doesn't really sound that great to you because, the acoustics of how your own voice travels from your mouth to your ears. But that's why it's important to record. The sounds that you hear, it's a little bit different from the sounds that everyone else is hearing. That's why having that recording, having that external fact to yourself can really help you give more effective and objective feedback to your own performance or sound. Secondly, I present and I do it in a way that helps me with my public speaking, but you can also use this technique for conversations. Maybe there's something really difficult that you want to bring up with your friend or your partner or someone you're working with. You can pick up your little stuffed animal, Mr. Teddy Bear, and think, how will my words land on Mr. Teddy Bear and the person I eventually want to talk to? You can practice how you sound, the attitude, your facial expressions, and your word choice. And you can record yourself and think, if I was the other person, how would this sound to me? The final thing that I want to say about practicing is that there is no shame in needing to practice. Some of us need 5 minutes, some of us need 10 hours. I practiced for 7 hours for this presentation. So, what matters is that you do everything that you need to, that when you log off of your Zoom call, you step off of that stage, you leave that meeting room, you feel proud of the way that you delivered your message. And my final advice to all of you is to search for the opportunity to learn in every circumstance. Maybe you're in lecture with that professor that's droning on and on. You can take note of what you don't like about your prof and think about, do I do those things? How can I stop doing those things? Or maybe you just had a conversation, a difficult one, or you just had a presentation. Take some time to reflect. What were your strengths? What were your weaknesses? And think about how can you improve for the next time.
All right, so pivoting a little bit. Oh, is there feedback for everyone? No, okay, we're good. So I'm going to be talking about how to effectively communicate in a team, which will be beneficial to all of you because you're all on a team. We will be talking about kind of the different types of communication, how to effectively communicate in a team setting. So if you could all annotate the screen, why do you think communication in a team is important? Sharing ideas, yes. Someone put bubbles. That's always fun. Organization, cannot get the work done effectively without it. Efficiency, understand each other's needs, making sure you are on the same page. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. Keep the team updated. Yes, perfect. All right. How do we clear the text? Thank you. So why communication is important. So in a team, you are all working towards the same goal. You need to define and ensure that the goal is shared by all team members. If there are questions or issues about the goal, they need to be resolved in order for the team to move forward. When decisions need to be made, the team has to be made aware of the decisions that is at hand. If communication keeps the team members informed, therefore a team working towards the same goal can be more effective and efficient. So when you're working in a team, by having good communication, by having good strategies to communicate, you're able to effectively get your point across to others and make sure that everyone's on the same page. That makes the team more efficient moving forward. This way, if something needs to get done, the team knows what needs to get done instead of other people not being aware of things and certain parts of the communication being lost and having like some people on the same page, some people not on the same page, and it just leads to more issues moving forward. And especially this point about if there's like any issues, having an issue is totally normal when working in groups. And so through good communication, you're able to work towards easily resolving the issue at hand. And sometimes within the group, in the case of all of you, there might be issues, and maybe within your group, you can't resolve it on your own. And that's okay. That's why you can communicate it with Sienna and I or Emma, and then we can work together to communicate and kind of fix those issues. All right, so why is communication necessary? So when you communicate, if information is shared within the team, and then team members have the knowledge that is shared with them. And this knowledge is power. And this sense of power gives members a sense of belonging and direction. And then dedicated members will contribute more and feel valued to the team. So when communicating, it's not only good to get the task done, but it's also good to boost the morale of the team. So if everyone's on the same page, then they're more willing, or they're able to get more done and kind of feel like, oh, I'm a valued member of this team because I'm being shared all the information that I need to. And it's not like there's this kind of division of power and this division of knowledge amongst the team. And so that's by having good communication, by kind of using those good communication skills, you're able to share knowledge and information with the team. And it's really important to highlight and appreciate team members because, we all work very hard and it's nice to feel appreciated. And so through communication, we're able to do that. All right, so creating team communication. First thing to creating team communication is to ensure that goals are clearly defined. By clearly defining goals, you're able to outline what needs to be done, the tasks that are at hand. This way, everyone is aware of kind of where you stand as a foundation. Next is interaction is aimed at solving problems and achieving team goals. So from the initial foundation of like defining the goals, then you can start to work your way up of like kind of working together to further build up the communication and the team. So the foundation's been laid by clearly defining the goals, and then by working together and solving problems and achieving goals, you're further building up the team structure. And finally, ensuring team members trust each other by having open communication is something that's so key because, if there's not open communication and if everyone on the team doesn't trust each other, then, the foundation and the building blocks that you've put up are only as strong as their weakest link. As cheesy as it is, it's true. If you kind of have a loss of communication down below or in the middle, the whole structure will crumble down unless you have those good communicate and open communication with one another. So some guidelines to team communication. So be specific, include facts and details to avoid being vague. Be accurate. As much as possible, be sure that the information you are giving is true and reliable. Be honest. Be truthful with those you are communicating with and do not use questionable information. Be logical. Make sure messages are easy to follow. Be complete. Give all needed information in regards to your ideas. Be concise. Be brief and not unnecessarily wordy. Be relevant. Stay on task and give information that is needed. Ask for feedback. Have recipients give comments on information. So when working in a team, these are some good things to keep in mind to ensure that your communication is effective and clear when working towards your goal. And that last point of ask for feedback is so important when working on a team, because when working in a team, it's not just one person who's making all the decisions, it's everyone working collaboratively with one another. So by asking feedback, you're able to hear other people's ideas, you're able to kind of see their thought process, and it's really beneficial to kind of strengthen the team and strengthen how effective you are at completing your tasks. So if you all could annotate this slide, what are some responsibilities of of team members when communicating? So what do you think are some responsibilities of people on a team when you communicate with one another? Taking turns speaking, yes. Inclusivity, expressing your needs, being open to others' ideas, not keeping stuff to the last minute, transparency, yes. Not, oh, being prompt, yes. Love it. Great answers, everyone. All right. All right, thank you. Sorry, someone popped their comment right at the last second. So some responsibilities of team members to keep in mind. So you're on a team and working on a team. Some things to keep in mind are being open-minded, listening to what is being said, give feedback to what is being said to you, make sure all team members have a chance to communicate their ideas. And if a decision needs to be made, discuss the pros and cons and decide the best option for the team, not just the individual. Take ownership for what you say. Take responsibility for making sure you are heard and understood. Use terminology and examples that your audience understands. Be aware of body language, and always work to maintain the trust and confidence of those whom you are communicating and working with. So when on a team, like I previously mentioned, it's not just one person who's kind of doing all the work. You're working collaboratively with one another. And so part of good communication is listening to what others have to say, giving feedback to what is said, and kind of making sure that you have those open communications and open dialogue with one another. But also kind of like what I said about using terminology and examples that your audience understands. That's something really important to keep in mind if English is not their first language, or someone who might not be familiar with North American kind of like slang. So trying to use like standard basic English and terminology that is easily understood. And if you do use some terminology that maybe might not be very clear, to kind of explain it and just kind of define the terminology so that everyone can be on the same page. And I also mentioned being aware of body language. I know this is kind of difficult being online. You can't necessarily see the body language. Sometimes people have their camera off. But when working on it, you can kind of pick up sometimes on body language, whether they seem zoned out or if they are typically participating, but maybe they aren't anymore now. And it's always good to like reach out and kind of, or read the room kind of thing, even though it's a virtual room, but seeing if people seem engaged, or maybe you need to speed up your pace a bit, stuff like that. And kind of the benefit of Zoom is that there's also the function where people can say speak faster, or I think like louder, stuff like that. So those are really helpful tools to utilize. All right, so this brings us to the end of our presentation. These are some additional resources that we have for you. Sienna, do you want to explain them?
Absolutely. So if you take a look at this slide, you will realize I am obsessed with TED Talks and I love watching them. So at the top, these are some resources in terms of this podcast and these TED Talks. They talk about ways to communicate better, how to use your voice, how to have a good conversation, and how you can make your behaviors and mindset work for you when you're communicating. And down here at the bottom, these are 3 TED Talks of speakers that I think are absolutely wonderful. I love Clint Smith's message. I think Lovey here is so funny. And I just really like Adam Grant. I think he's a really awesome speaker. So if you're also interested, I highly encourage checking these out. But you might also find more resources on your own. And so the final thing that I want to say is that a lot of the things that Kieta and I talked about today, we are still in the process of learning and practicing these things. And so I encourage you to be patient with yourself. Just because you decide I'm going to become a better speaker or I'm going to XYZ doesn't mean it's going to just happen the next day, that you can automatically change all of your habits. So be patient with yourself. It takes time to learn, it takes time to build new habits. And I encourage you to continue persevering, asking questions, and seeking more and more opportunities to challenge yourself.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our presentation. This is kind of the structure that we'd like to see all of you kind of follow when you're conducting your workshops. On Monday, we will be sending out a Google